Welcome to the Ship Happens Podcast, a podcast about construction, education, and everything in between. I am your host, Joseph Garibaldi, and I invite you to take a listen to a new and exciting podcast about construction and teaching. Thank you, guys.
What's going on, guys? Back here again with another episode of this podcast, episode 6. The big day. I think 6 is a pretty good number. I want to talk about a couple different things. I'm filming this right before the Carruthers Fair. I don't know how I feel about that just yet, but when you guys hear this, you're going to hear this. God, it'll be a week after fair is over. So things might be a little bit different. I might have a different approach in 2 weeks when you hear the episode right after fair. But we're going to hope for the best. I get asked a lot of times why I do the things I do. And I do it for the kids, right? I do it for their experience. So when I get stressed and when I really think about things, I do it for the kids. And I really make sure the kids are taken care of because I want kids to experience exactly the experience of a normal year. I mean, I know this isn't really a normal year, but I want kids to be able to experience that. And so I put myself through a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety for the kids, and I just really want them to have a great time. That's all I really want. I want them to experience some sense of normality in this world. Anyways, right before fair, I don't want to talk about a serious subject. Let's see what I had planned to talk about. I'll make notes about what each episode's going to be about. And episode 6 was supposed to be about how to start making money with a skill. It's about budget. I'm gonna push that to next week. This week I want to talk about something. I filmed a TikTok video, and it was about give you a gist of the video. There's a song by country artist Luke Combs called Hurricane. Basically, I was using a Milwaukee drill. A DeWalt drill was laying next to it with another smaller Milwaukee M12 drill. Now, I was putting a screw into 3 boards, and it was supposed to be that the Makita drill comes in because I use these set of black Makita drills. There's a driver and also a regular chuck-based drill, and I use both of those pretty interchangeably, and they all have wear and tear, glue all over them. I use those mainly when I am building my projects, but kids always see me with these Makitas, so I wanted to film a little bit of a funny thing of me using other drills, and the Makita drill catches me, then walks out the door. So I filmed a little TikTok, and I thought it was kind of funny, but that got me thinking, what's in a brand, right? We always hear people, my dad was the same way, only buy a particular brand of tools. What tool brands do I use, and what tools do I use? What tools do I use? What tools do I allow my students to use to be successful? Now, I have an episode later on, it's like episode 13, so that's like in a few weeks, like 6 weeks, maybe a couple months away, where I talk about Harbor Freight tools and buying cheap versus quality, that sort of thing. But today I want to talk about starting out and buying tools for your shop and what tools I use. I actually use the tools that I like. I'm not set to one particular brand. In fact, I have DeWalt batteries, I have Ryobi batteries, I have Milwaukee batteries. I stick to the tools that I like and the tools that I use all the time. I find it that one manufacturer may not make the best tool, or they may make one tool better than the other. For example, I think Makita makes the absolute best drills and drivers. There's nothing better. There is nothing better than a Makita drill and driver. I think they make really good jigsaws as well. Milwaukee, on the other hand, they make great drills and drivers. I don't think they're as good as Makita's in my personal opinion, but their saws are next to none. They created the Sawzall. They created the hacksaw. Their saws and their blades are, in my opinion, some of the best you can get. When it comes to DeWalt, I think DeWalt is fantastic. They make the best miter saw. They make the best job site table saw. Now, I know there's other brands like Delta with their cruisers and fantastic saws, but I think for the bang for buck ratio, I think DeWalt wins that. DeWalt has such a wide range of tools. So does Makita. Makita has over 270 tools. The only reason why I know that is I'm looking currently at a poster on my wall from Makita. So what's in a brand, right? My grandfather swore by Makita drills. He had all generations of Makitas. He even had the generation when they had the battery that looked like Ryobi's battery. It has like a little, stick that sticks out that snaps into the tool. Speaking of Ryobi, I think they're a very underrated brand. I've gotten some good Ryobi tools. They're very affordable, right? And I think they deserve a little bit more respect than they get. They're kind of a store brand, right? Home Depot branded item, but they're fantastic tools. Like leaps and bounds better than what you find at Lowe's and other stores. Like Cobalt does not hold a torch to Ryobi. And there's a good chance that if you have an old Ryobi drill, like the old blue, like dark navy blue Ryobi drill, good chance plants, that drill's still going to take Ryobi batteries. They haven't changed their batteries up. In fact, at home, I own all of Ryobi's 40-volt gardening tools, and I've had nothing but good things to say about them. I have a Ryobi 40-volt chainsaw, Ryobi 40-volt weed whacker. I have a Ryobi 40-volt blower. They are fantastic batteries and tools, and I have nothing bad to say about them. I have a brother who swears by Rigid. He only buys orange tools, so he buys Rigid tools, and he swears by them. And I've used the Rigid Job Max. It's like a detachable tool. You can put different heads on it. If you want a right angle attachment, you can put that on there. If you want a hammer drill, you can put that on. And they have the Job Max, and they have, I think, a smaller one. I can't remember the exact name of it, but they're fantastic tools. I think for Rigid, the adaptability and the be able for them to transform is incredible. I think those are super cool tools. But what's in a brand? Nothing. My personal opinion, nothing. I have personal brands that I like to use and that I kind of roll with. I mean, I use Makita for a lot of things. I have so much Makita tools, so many Makita tools, I should say. But when I look around and when I fully look at tools and when I go and actually shop, I'm not looking for Makita's version. I'm looking for the best version. If that means I have to buy another battery system, then that means I have to buy another battery system. By the way, in terms of batteries, I think Milwaukee kind of wins that game. Their batteries are literally incredible. However, the FlexVolt battery from DeWalt is very, very impressive, I do have to say. And I have a FlexVolt skill saw that I'm hoping to put against Makita's 36-volt skill saw, which is basically 2 Makita batteries put on the thing. Speaking of Makita, by the way, I'm actually really pumped. I just got a track saw from Makita, and that thing is amazing. I don't even know where my life has been. I have a full panel saw in my shop, and I've always been kind of unhappy with it. It's a Powermatic panel saw. It doesn't cut super straight. There's too many bolts and moving parts, and I haven't gotten it super square, but this Makita track saw, my God, incredible. Incredible. I don't even know why I haven't gotten one sooner. I watch a YouTuber called Scott Brown Carpentry. He's from New Zealand, and he's been talking about his Makita track saw. Used it for years, and I finally, bit the bullet and bought one. And my God, incredible. Incredible. If you haven't, or if you're on the tipping edge of buying a Makita track saw or any kind of really track saw, buy one. Buy one, buy one, buy one. But what's in a brand? When we talk about brands, and I talk about Makita and DeWalt, Milwaukee, those are the 3 I happen to use, Ryobi as well. What's in that brand? There are other brands out there, and I'm going to talk about those later, so I'm going to hold off from talking about those high-end brands. But I'll talk about one high-end brand right now. Festool makes some very impressive tools, very modern tools, and they're incredible. They're really insane, and I love those tools. They work fantastically. But would I use them on a job site? Maybe. Depends on what job I would use. Depends on what tool it would be. I like Festool's vacuums. I think their vacuums are second to none in terms of their actual usability and workability. But will I use them for a school? Probably not. My kids are extremely hard on tools, and that's going to come up way later. But to give you kind of a preference, I know some teachers that buy very, very cheap tools. They buy kind of the cheapest of the cheap, and I can understand their kids don't take care of their tools. But my purpose or my point is, if they're on a job site, they should not use the cheapest of the cheap tools. They should use tools they will find on the job site. So I try to make the tools I use very realistic to a normal job site. They should be able to know what battery system goes where and how to use which, whatever battery system. So I have the 3 most popular. Makita, Milwaukee, DeWalt happen to be, in my opinion, the 3 most popular battery brands. They kind of go back and forth, and as long as kids know how to use each of those systems, I think they'll be very, very successful. Moving on to tools I use, and kind of must-have tools if you're starting up a shop or you're starting into this business. To be real honest, a drill driver, I have to have that. If you buy a house, you have an apartment, buy a drill driver kit. You can get cheap ones from Ryobi, and those will do you perfectly well for a hobbyist or DIYer. If you're going into a trade, even Ryobi probably is going to be good enough for a trade until you get your feet on the ground. Then I'd probably upgrade to Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita. You're going to hear those 3 brands constantly. Those are the ones I prefer, and those are ones I like. I've used Bosch, I've used the other competitors, and I haven't really just enjoyed those tools as much as I enjoyed the offering from Makita, Milwaukee, or DeWalt. Drill driver, have to have. A 7¼ inch skill saw, number 2. You have to have that. A skill saw is one of the more versatile cutting tools. That's how you're going to get straight cuts. You can do a lot of different things. For example, the house I bought, I had to replace the shower in the house. They put a cheap Glacier Bay shower fixture in there. I actually made a YouTube video about my problems with that, and I ended up switching it out. But what the problem was, they didn't put an access panel. So I was forced with two choices. I could break out the tile and put a new fixture in and then retile it. But then later on, whenever it does fail or break, I'm gonna have to break the tile again to actually get in there to change it. Most showers, if they're done inside the house on a wall that faces like a hallway or a bedroom, they should have an access panel, which is a little panel of drywall that you can undo, open up, and there's the valves that you can easily quickly change out. My house doesn't have that. It's on the outside will be where the plumbing is. So I talked to a plumber about an unrelated issue about my well, and he mentioned how bad the system was that I had for my shower. And his recommendation was that I could break out the tile, or I can cut a hole in the side of the house, put a panel up, and then I can always switch it out later on. I will never have to worry about it. So that's what I did. But the way I did this, because trust me, you have to cut a hole through stucco, and I went through a bunch of different ways to cut a hole through stucco. So what I did was I took my skill saw, I put a stone cutting blade, like a tile blade on there, and I cut a square out of the stucco. And it worked out pretty well, actually, I do have to say. Right, once you cut through the stucco, you have the chicken wire there underneath it, and then you have whatever the sheathing of the house was. This was kind of composite, or not really composite, but it was like a very, very cheap plywood is what they put on there. I can't think of the name right now, but you get the point. It was a very, very cheap plywood. That was fine. So I switched the skill saw to a wood cutting blade, cut through the plywood, and boom, I was right there at the valve and the two studs and the stud that connects or holds up the valve. And boom, right there I was able to change out my valve very quick, very easy. I was lucky whoever renovated this house put PEX in, so I could just unscrew it and screw on a new valve and new system, and I was good to go. That's just how versatile the skill saw is. Milwaukee, Makita, DeWalt, Ryobi makes good skill saws. I have a Skill branded skill saw. It's actually called a circular saw, but Skill made the first circular saw, or they made the most popular. I mean, don't quote me on that. I don't think they made the first one, but they may have made the most popular one, and we've always called it the skill saw after that. So yeah, a skill saw, super important. With the skill saw, if you were to put the skill saw on a track, because a skill saw is pretty free, right? If you put the skill saw on a track, that becomes a track saw. A track saw is so important. I cannot put that any more clear. The track saw is amazing. I love it. I don't know why it took me so long to get one. They are literally amazing to make straight, even cuts. It's way nicer to use than a table saw. With that, or along with that, I should say, clamps are also super important. Bessie is technically the brand name, but I haven't really had good luck with Bessie clamps. Maybe it's because I get the cheaper ones, I guess, and they have better ones. I should probably look into investing in some of those, but clamps are pretty important. You can find pretty cheap clamps at like garage sales and stuff. I got a lot of old clamps and they work fantastic. Clamps are so important. Table saw, I get a lot of people asking me if Saw Stop is worth it. Is it good? Is it worth to buy? And I don't know. My table saw journey is a little weird. When I came into the shop, there was a very, very old table saw. I think, was it Wilbur and Ellis? I don't know. I can't remember exactly the name. Wilbur and Ellis probably is the way wrong name. But it might have been an old Powermatic, very, very old. In fact, they added on a extension table and their own ruler and made their own fence. Didn't have any guards on it whatsoever. Very unsafe. So I got rid of that and I I ordered a brand new saw. Well, my school, I was new. I didn't really know the order process, but I ordered a Delta table saw. Thing was freaking amazing. I loved it. 5 horsepower, incredible table saw. Cut so nice. Everything was perfect. Well, I guess the table saw I ordered was, I guess they don't make it anymore. Is the story I was getting from them. They don't make this table saw anymore, so they had to ship it back to me. They didn't ship me certain parts and they weren't able to get it, so they just returned it. So I went back to the drawing board and I ordered a Jet table saw. It was 3 horsepower, slightly smaller, and I've been really happy with it. It's done everything I need it to do. It struggles with resawing wood. My bandsaw isn't super good, so I can't resaw or completely trim lumber very well, but it does the job pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with it. Table saw, super important. Job site saws work perfectly fine. I know builders who just build with job site table saws, like those small compact table saws. DeWalt makes a fantastic job site table saw. Couldn't recommend them anymore, and those are extremely worth it and very portable, very useful. So don't think you have to go out and get a huge cabinet style table saw. The job site one will work perfectly fine. I also think a planer is very important. A planer is I'm talking about a thickness planer. They have a handheld planer which works extremely well. That's there to kind of act act as a joiner. I have a joiner as well. I still prefer the handheld one more than anything. I feel like I have more control over it, but the power joiner that I have that's stationary handles a lot bigger timber. So I don't know, it's kind of a trade-off. But back to the planer. They do have a handheld type planer, which is more close to a joiner, but the lunchbox, like DeWalt planer, works phenomenally. I think that is worth it on every job site to take down thickness of wood. Basically, it makes both sides parallel to each other. So if there's a curve, it's going to keep that curve. It's not going to get rid of the curve. There's certain things you can do to get rid of the curve and to make jigs and stuff. I have some jigs that I made. Maybe I should make a video about them, but there's things you can do with that to get it flat. So it's very, very worth it, and I recommend that for everyone. Once you start planing, you'll never stop. So it's pretty cool. Next one, I love pocket holes. I am a huge fan of Craig pocket hole jigs. All the stuff by them, I must have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying pocket hole stuff. I think that's the best way to join up wood. Now, I have gone through a lot of different jointing methods, but if I'm trying to join up some wood, a pocket hole is what my go-to is going to be. When it comes down to cabinetry, pocket holes are second to none. There's a lot of different styles of joining wood. Miter joints, you have your mortise and tenon, you have lap joints, butt joints, all these different kinds of joints. But I feel like the pocket hole is so underrated, and when used with glue, it's extremely strong. And I think a pocket hole is easily my favorite thing to use. So if you're starting out, you want to build things, invest in the pocket hole jig. They have systems that go all the way up to $500 that does your own pocket holes, or you have a small, tiny $20 jig that all you need is a clamp, and it comes with everything that you need. I'll have a video on pocket holes sometime soon, but pocket holes, worth it. Invest in it, live it, love it. Get pocket holes. Next, a miter saw. Man, a compound sliding miter saw is actually what is important. You can get regular chop saws that pull down, but the actual sliding action and the compound that is able to move and cut different curves or different angles is so important, and it's worth every single bit of money. I think DeWalt has one for $400, but you can easily find cheap ones from Ryobi that work fantastic. They might be a little bit small. I mean, I have one that's a 12-inch blade, and I think that's the one I would save up money for, but if you have to have a miter saw, a 7.25-inch blade would do the job just fine. You just won't be able to cut very thick material out of it. But if you're just cutting 2x4s, that'll do the job just fine for you. Miter saws get you very square and even cuts. They're important, but they don't rank up there. A good skill saw or circular saw will do the job of the miter saw just fine, and you don't really need a miter saw right away. In fact, I'd probably look at getting a table saw before I get a miter saw. And that's a hard sell, man, because as a kid, I always thought the miter saw was the ultimate tool, seeing everything people have done with them. And you might consider them to be the ultimate tool, but I think a table saw is more useful. A table saw and circular saw will get you to where a miter saw is at. A miter saw is more of a nice to have. Routers are basically handheld machines that have a bit that spins. They're very, very useful. I think routers are easily one of the more useful tools. You can do anything you want with a router. You can put different bits on it, different styles, and you can even do crown molding if you get really good with a router. You can even mount the router to a table and have even more or straight cuts or ridges that you can make out of any sort of material, really, as long as the bit permits. And I think the miter saw is very important. Now, a couple more I want to talk about. A drill press is very important. If you want straight holes to drill through things, a drill press is extremely important. I know we have drills, handheld drills that can do it, but even the slightest angle will kind of throw off, especially if you have to put a bolt and nut in and you need it to be straight. You're bolting a wooden tabletop to a metal sort of stand or metal feet. You want to make sure those holes are straight. So a drill press will kind of save you a little bit of time and frustration and maybe some headaches from that. Kind of a honorable mention, and one that I'm slowly getting used to, that is the multi-tool. I think DeWalt makes one, Makita has one. I have one by Milwaukee that I love. It's essentially a tool that has a bunch of different heads that you can put on it. Let's say you're doing some home renovations and you need to take up your baseboard, right? Your baseboard holds the floor into place. It gives you kind of a skirt so you don't have to see any of your mistakes you may have made when you're trying to line up your floor to your wall, and it gives it a nice transition. Let's say you need to take up a part of of a baseboard because you need to replace a board. I can take up a whole huge section of baseboard and pull it up, but what if I don't want to do that? What if I just want to do a little bit of it? Well, that's where the multi-tool comes in. I have a saw attachment that I can use to cut the baseboard, and boom, there I am. I'm right into exactly where I need to be. Let's say I'm installing, this is a true story, I'm installing a security screen door on the front of my house. Well, there is a little bit of a gap on the bottom, so you need to add a little skirt that fits on the bottom there. Well, the skirt's not going to fit exactly up to your door frame. Every door frame pretty much is custom made, so I took my multi-tool and I cut a little bit underneath that door frame, and I was able to slide in that aluminum piece to keep it pretty rock steady. So those were super important, and I really think those are, I wouldn't be able to do it without that tool, right? So the multi-tool is extremely important and one of my absolute favorite tools to use. I don't use it as much in this shop because there's really not a whole lot we can use it for, but when it comes down to doing things for people and sending kids on, you're going to see my air quotation, jobs to other classrooms to work on things, the multi-tool is an invaluable tool, and they're able to do those renovations a lot quicker and a lot easier. So understand, the multi-tool for the homeowner is amazing, and you can find them from every brand pretty much nowadays. So those are some of my favorite tools. I really appreciate you guys listening. I'm sorry this episode kind of seemed all over the place, but I hope you guys have learned a little bit or got some ideas of some tools you want to buy. Remember, brand does not matter. I don't care what anyone says. Brand is not important. You get the tool that makes you happy. Now, ideally, you would buy the tool and you don't want to invest in another battery system, so you buy, I don't know, all Makita tools. So there's no shame in that. There's no shame in buying all Milwaukee tools. There's no shame in buying all DeWalt tools. Don't let people shame you on what tools you use. Everyone's going to have their own opinion. Just because I like Makita doesn't mean you should get a Makita. Just because your dad likes DeWalt doesn't mean you should get a DeWalt. You should get the tool that you like, that fits you. Do not worry about brand. Do not worry about that sort of thing. I appreciate you guys listening. This might be a little bit short of an episode, but I wanted to talk about my favorite tools. I love tools. I think tools are so important in today's world, in the homeowner and also the shop. So it's extremely important, and I really appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully we'll talk some more about some tools and how we create stuff with those tools. Hey, you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening. If this is nighttime where you're at, good night. Have a good day tomorrow. If you're just starting your day with my podcast, I hope I gave you guys some inspiration to do something today. I really appreciate all of you listening, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see you later.
This has been an episode of the Chip Happens podcast. Thank you all for listening, and I will catch you next week with another exciting episode.